Shalom and welcome to the Meir TV Parsha Talk. Shalom to Menachem.
Shalom, shalom.
This coming Shabbat, we're going to be reading Parshat Ki Tisa, and the first mitzvah that we meet up with is the giving of the half a shekel. And also, this week we're going to be celebrating Purim. Is there any correlation or connection between the giving of the half a shekel and the holiday of Purim?
The custom of Shekel Machatzit shekel. To this day, the custom is that everybody donates a half of a shekel. Sfaradim do the actual calculation of how much weight of silver it was in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, and they give that amount. The Ashkenazim give the half of the coin of that country. If you're in America, you give a half a dollar. In Israel, half a shekel. There's even a custom to give 3 half of shekels, because the Jews in the desert were supposed to give 3 trumot, as it says at the beginning of Parshat Truma.
So it's a very interesting, not coincidental. We're learning about the half a shekel that will finance all the public sacrifices for the Jewish people in the Beit HaMikdash. And here we have the custom this week on the fast of Esther to give a half a shekel.
Right, Chazal say that we always try to give the Zechel Machzit the shekel, this commemoratorial, if there is such a word. we try to give this this donation before we read the Megillah, before Purim starts. And the reason why, one of the reasons given is that in the Megillah, Haman relates how he decided to give a donation of his own in order to destroy the Jewish people. He says, how much is he going to donate to the coffers of the king of Persia in order to make it worthwhile for the king to destroy the Jews? He says, 10,000 kikar kesef. Eshkol al yidei oseh hamlacha. He uses the word that he's going to give or measure out this amount in order to make sure that he gets permission to destroy the Jewish people.
And why did this threat really happen? Certainly it's not by mere incident. The fact that the Jewish people are facing destruction amongst all the 127 states of the Persian Empire. Why is it happening?
It's a very good question. It's a question that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai asked his students asked Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai actually, why sure, we know the end of the story, there's a happy end and God saved the Jewish people. Why were they put through this in the first place? Why does that threat of utter destruction, annihilation essentially, why was that put upon the Jewish people? And there's a number of answers mentioned in the Gemara. I want to focus perhaps on one which connects us to what we were discussing earlier, and that we try to donate our half shekels before we read about Haman donating his shekels. What's the connection? The mitzvah of giving half of a shekel is something that devolves upon each and every one of the Jewish people. We all together have to bring the sacrifices, the offerings in the temple. The temple service has to be something which is from everybody together. And everybody realizes that they're only part of the picture. That's why they give half a shekel. And if we all recognize that we stand in front of God as one, and we have to be together as a nation, this is what's going to perhaps push away the decree of Haman. Haman, it says in the Megillah, when he presents his plan to Achashverosh, he says, there is a nation which is mefuzar u'mefarad mibein hamim. Scattered
and dispersed amongst all the nations.
Exactly. And Chazal see that as a accusation that our enemies can attack us when they see there's disunity, when we're not responsible for each other, when we ignore each other and we don't act together as one nation. And so when we try to preface and sort of give the solution before the problem, by giving our half a shekels, we're reminding ourselves that we have to be together as a nation to meet and to face all the different adversaries that we may face in Haman's time and of course in ours as well.
And that's what Esther really requested. Before going in uncalled to the courtyard of the king, she asks, or in an imperative way tells Mordecai, go ahead and gather together the Jews in every place. Fast on me, pray for me.
Right.
So here we see the unity as the fuel for bringing salvation to the Jewish people.
Right, that's the solution. It's an amazing midrash that I found, which describes the story of the decree being given that destroy the Jewish people in the Megillah. It says that Achashverosh agreed after Haman gave him his shekels or his promise. He gave him his plan, and then they sat down to eat. They had a meal.
They were eating and drinking.
Eating and drinking. Melech v'Aman yashvu lishtot. They sat down to drink. And the Midrash says, you know, this phrase that the people sitting down to eat together reminds us of something that happened in our history.
Maybe about Yosef and the brothers.
Exactly.
After he was thrown into the pit.
Exactly. They throw him into the pit. Vayishvu le'echol lechem. They sat down to have a meal. And the Midrash connects
While he's in danger.
Exactly.
They're eating a meal.
It's the same theme. It's the same thread. That if the Jewish people are fighting with each other, here we have brothers against brothers, selling brothers down the river, literally down the Nile River. That is linked. The Midrash links that to that disunity, that fighting between the internal fighting between the Jewish people, to the decree which Haman was able to get to destroy the Jewish people.
Are there other answers, perhaps, that our sages provided why such a calamity God was facing the Jewish people?
Right, so I started with the students of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, asking him, and he said to them, "Why do you think?" Like a good teacher, he
Ask
said,
the students.
What's the students? And they said to him, you know, the problem is that the Jewish people partook of the feast of Oto Rasha, of Achashverosh. They partook of the feast. And it's a little bit of a strange answer. What's so bad about, you know, if the king invites you to a party, are you not going to go? Many different approaches have been raised, avoiding the obvious that maybe it wasn't kosher, but let's assume...
Let's say they had kosher food and kosher wines.
Yeah.
But what was really Achashverosh celebrating?
Right. So the Chazal fill in to us that actually, as we have the custom to sing, we use the tune of the Eicha. Achashverosh was using the vessels from the Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash just destroyed earlier by the Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar. Now the empires have switched and the Persian Empire took over for Babylon. And essentially what Achashverosh was celebrating, according to Chazal, was that Jerusalem was destroyed and the Jewish people are not going back.
That's right.
And so this is what the students' answer was. They say, how could the Jews in the exile in Persia partake of this feast, essentially agreeing that that's it. We have no national aspiration to go back to the land of Israel. We're not going to rebuild the temple. And by their participating, they were agreeing to that.
But that would be a calamity only for the people living in Shushan. What about the Jews?
Shimon
Everyone
Bar
else?
Yochai answered. Shimon Bar Yochai said that's a nice idea, and maybe even have some element of truth to it. But that only the Jews living in Shushan partook of that feast. It wasn't the Jews everywhere. So, like good students, they actually went back to their original question and asked their Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Said, "So you tell us, great Rabbi, what the sin was. What was the problem that?"
An additional answer provided there.
So he says because they bowed down to the idol.
The idol of?
It's a little unclear which idol.
Doesn't say the idol of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon.
It doesn't say explicitly. It says they bowed down to an idol. Could be, there's a famous midrash that Haman around his neck wore a cross of some sort or some kind of little statuette of Avodah Zarah, and everybody who was forced to bow down to Haman was essentially, he was forcing them to bow down to his idol. So there was a religious motif. This is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was telling them, is that they lost their connection to the religion. They lost their Jewish identity by participating.
Idolatry is one of the worst prohibitions in the entire Torah.
Absolutely. And, but the students, of course, as good students, they fought back and they said, if that's true, what you're saying is true, then...
So why were they saved?
How can
why were they
God forgive
saved?
them? Exactly. That's such a terrible sin. It's even worse than perhaps giving up your national aspirations, is, idol worship. And he answers to them a fascinating answer, which really brings us to the heart of what Purim is all about.
It was only on the outside, wasn't it? That they were banging down.
They did a surface. They bowed down. They went through the motions. As we know that throughout history, Jews were forced to convert or profess their belief in Christianity. Famously, the Marranos who did that externally, but internally in their hearts, they still believed in God. They still believed in the Jewish God and felt that they were committed to Judaism. And so too the people in Shushan. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is telling his students, they may have sinned, of course, by bowing down. But what's critical is that they really didn't lose totally their connection. A Jew is always connected inside, right? The Hasidim talk about the Pintel Yid, that little spark of Judaism which is still alive. It's still that sense of identity. I identify as a Jew, even if my external actions are not always going to express them. And so God acted in exactly the same way. On the outside, we felt the threat. We felt the threat. It was a real threat. The Jews fasted and everybody was upset. But ultimately, in hindsight, we see that it was an external threat. It wasn't really. God never really intended to destroy the Jewish people. And this mode of making sure that the inside is still connected, even if sometimes we sin and our external actions don't always express who we really should be. This is another key to understanding Purim. Purim, we put on costumes, we put on faces, masks. They're called faces in the ancient literature, and we put on plays. And the whole Megillah reads like some kind of a farcical play, and that expresses this idea that the Jewish people were so connected that even if there are threats and there's different stages in how connected we are. In the end, if we're connected deep inside and we keep our identity, Hashem will also keep His connection with us.
If we look and examine Mordecai as one of the heroes of the story of saving the Jewish people, and the fact that he's an Ishimini, a member of the tribe of Binyamin, why is that important? What's significant about the Megillah telling us that?
Well, Mordecai didn't bow down. It's amazing. Connection back to what we started with, perhaps, of the story of the brothers selling Yosef, this hatred between the brothers being the forerunner of the disunity which enabled Haman's decree to be given.
Who wasn't involved in that sale?
Binyamin, who was the forefather of Mordecai, was not involved in the sale. He's the only one of the brothers who didn't commit that sin, who didn't have this problem of hatred between the brothers. And the hero of the story that can unite the people and bring them back together is Mordecai HaYehudi, who was from the Shevet of Binyamin. Again, the unity being what brings us back together and ultimately leads to our salvation.
And that unity even entailed where the decree of fasting for 3 days included even the Seder Night, because it happened on the 13th of the month of Nisan. So 3 days includes the 13th, 14th, and 15th. 15th is the Seder Night, the night of Nisan. So they didn't eat matzah. They didn't do all the mitzvot of eating or drinking.
Pesach,
all on behalf of unity for the Jewish people to save them.
Right, they all had to gather together. That's amazing midrash, which is in the Psikta, which connects the eating of the Korban Pesach, which is a mitzvah which has to be done together in a chabura, in a group, which represents the unity of the Jewish people. We discussed it at one time that you're not allowed to break any bones of the Pesach. Many elements of the Pesach remind us of the unity of the Jewish people. And the Psikta says that Balayla Hazeh, you have to eat the Korban Pesach, celebrate the Seder on this night. And that is what leads us to the rectification, to the fixing, to the correction in the Jewish people, which saved us ultimately from the decree of Haman, where the words Balayla Hahu Nadadash Nat HaMelech, that same emphasis on this night, is a link.
That's the night of the 15th, the night of protection for the Jewish people.
Well, in the Pesach, it's the night of the 15th of Nisan, and in the Purim story, it's the night where the king's sleep
was restless.
Yes, he was restless, and that was the beginning of the redemption. When obviously he told Haman to elevate Mordecai and save Mordecai, and all of his plans of hanging Mordecai and killing the Jews turned around, v'na'afochu, and ultimately Haman got hung, and the Jewish people were saved. And another connection to this theme, that in order to be saved, just like in those days, also today in our days, I know we're in times of elections now, and we hear so much division and divisive talk, and everybody's trying to say how they're better than the next. We have to remember, especially in Purim, Lech kenoset kol Yehudim, gather all the Jews. We have to be together if we want Hashem to continue to save us and continue
beautiful idea.
The progress and the success of the Jewish people, the Geula, the redemption, will come like it happened in the times of the Purim also in our day.
Amen. B'ezrat Hashem. May we celebrate this holiday and really find deep down inside us our abilities to unite with all Jews from all different walks of life, and remember and see the common. So much in common between Jews, and not look at the things that are dividing us.
Absolutely. Let us celebrate together, drink and eat.
And do all the
together,
Mitzvah of Purim together.
Together with all the Jewish
Amen.
people, and not be divided again.
Yofi, very nice. Thank you very much, Rav Menachem, and thank you our
Viewers.
and Purim Sameach, Purim, happy Purim to you and all.
Purim Sameach.